Hi friends, once again let's continue with our topic on leadership and management. Okay, so we're looking at some classical scenarios, classical theories, frameworks that support the concept of leadership or the practice of leadership and management. Okay, so at this point, we want to take more technical approach to that concept, not the general basic understanding, but with this time around, we're going to be looking at a more detailed concept. Again, it's a summary, so I'll just highlight the points, keep it as concise as possible, and it is the burden of proof is upon you to take a good look into the text. Use the text to take a good look. All right. Leadership and management. Okay. Before we start, we want to start with the concept of authority. So authority, we all know, we would always say authority is when someone is given that attribute to influence, to lead or to exert some kind of control over someone. Okay. So authority in its own helps that individual, whether the manager or the director, to do or to guide, to lead, to cause someone to do something. Okay. There are some forms of authority, which Max Weber identified. So he identified three types of authority. Charismatic. Charismatic typically look at the fact that this person has a special quality, the charisma, from the word charisma, special quality or trait that sets them apart from the rest. So you want to, and that kind of charisma tends to draw others onto them. So it gives him that authority to control, to influence someone to do his work. Okay, so charismatic power is very in an organization depends so much on the individual. Any difficulties that arise, we think um, especially when this person cannot be replaced, we think this person now wields the power to have a say, to speak and decide what goes next. Okay. Now, it is always important that we identify such individuals in the organization and help to keep them. Okay. Because if they leave, they can draw a good number of followers along with them. At best, if we can get someone to understudy them, or if we can get someone to replace them, okay, and then talk of even the football clubs, for example. When someone leaves, I don't want to cite example, but if you take some football clubs, once a key person that draws them along leaves, if you are not careful, they start flopping. Okay, so charisma is very important. Everyone at a point in time should be able to get that special quality that sets them apart from the rest. Then we have the traditional, or what we all know to be based on practice and customs. Okay, so the personality of the individual here is not important. It's totally irrelevant in the case. Okay, but here traditionally we are saying that you tend to exert that authority as a result of what has been bequeathed to you. You inherit that authority by virtue of the fact that you deserve it. You are the one in line. Talk of um, kings, dynasties, rulerships. It is always traditional and by custom or by practice that once the king is not there, his elderly son or elderly daughter takes over the kingdom and rules. Okay, the custom, the practice. The same way in an organization, it is all clear. Once the vice chancellor is not there, we know the pro vice chancellor is in charge. Customarily, who will continue to act. In the football club, when the coach leaves, the assistant coach takes the helm of affairs. Traditionally, it's custom. And then we have the rational legal. This one typically arises from the organizational chart. By virtue of my role, my function, the power vested in me as a lecturer, for example, I'm able to exert some authority and guide students in some way, okay, in which way we expect them to perform. All right. Now, it is always important that you give someone an authority or someone is embedded with authority. This person must also be given some form of responsibility. Authority, once one we should know, can be split into different levels. Okay, it can occur at the line manager, like at the line level, as in a line manager scenario. It can also occur at the staff across a business, and it could also occur functionally where we combine this line and then staff functions. Okay, so it could happen in those areas. Now, we are always required, like I'm saying, to be given some form of responsibility. Responsibility in this scenario is talking about your job duties, your job descriptions, your function. I have my responsibility as a lecturer to teach, to impart knowledge. Okay. Again, I must account once my students fail. Okay. If you do not perform up to standard, I have that responsibility to be able to accountable for their performance. So accountability works hand in hand with responsibility. That you should be able to report back to tell whether you've been able to discharge your duties or not. What happens? There are some um, risk, some dangers when you realize that someone is given authority but has no responsibility. Then you end up creating some form of dangerous scenario. What happens if you have responsibility without authority? What happens? Or you have authority without responsibility. So I have the power to direct, but I don't have any responsibility to account for it. I can do anything irresponsibly. Okay. In the same way, if I have responsibility without authority, there is always this element of being frustrated. Why am I given responsibility? But I can only teach, but someone will determine whether my students will write this exam or not. I've not been given that authority. I get frustrated. I get demotivated. Okay. So the two things should work hand in hand. Responsibility and then authority should always work hand in hand. And accountability plays a key role to keep them in check. Now, one key element of management is delegation, or even of leadership is delegation and empowerment. The two words. Empowerment means you make workers responsible. You keep them, hold them responsible for achieving their work. So imbue them with that kind of trait. You see, I'm giving you this kind of role. You have that role. You have that authority, sort of, okay, to be able to undertake your work. Get to the ground and deal with it. You have full control. So the goal ownership is transferred to this person. Okay. Delegation, you are delegating responsibility. Sometimes we delegate responsibility together with authority, but I would normally not buy into the concept of delegating authority. I would normally go for delegating responsibility. Okay. Um, it depends. Either way, you can make a case for it. Okay. So delegation where we're giving the subordinate the right to make decisions. Hand it over to him. Okay. It takes a number of forms, but before we go to the number of forms in which delegation takes, let's look at any functions, any benefits of undertaking delegation. What happens is that if I delegate my role, it frees me up on some activities so that I can concentrate on some core activities. Okay. Also helps to develop junior staff. You shouldn't always be doing the work always. Let someone also take some role. At the end of the day, there's some succession planning we bring in. Okay, you help build some skills and some technical competency there. Again, it helps in increasing specialization. So the more I do, the more I get a chance to take up an extra role, I get specialized. And once someone is not there, I can step in easily. It also helps us to take a closer look at the decisions which are taken on the ground. So it's a good thing. Delegation is very good. It's a good thing. Now, like I'm saying, what are the roles that delegation takes? Okay, so what are the forms, the different types? Abdication, as you can see, it's not the best. Okay, in this scenario, you normally leave the issues without any formal delegation. It's a very crude way, not effective. I don't bother to make decision in person. Give it to him. Take the decision yourself. No. And then we have the custom and practice, the traditional rule. Okay, it's an age-old system from what we know. So we know that the younger or the junior staff, they are the ones to always report early to set up the office, to get a coffee for the senior guys. Okay, once everyone has left the meeting room, they pack all the papers and trash, and that's the traditional way. So always, he's not even told, he knows what he's supposed to do. Then we have the explanation, a good one. Before you delegate, explain to the person, clear cut instructions. Let him know this is what you're supposed to do. On that note, always it is done with the assumption that the person knows already is technically adept in doing that. Okay. And then we have consultation. For consultation, before you delegate, ask the person, are you willing? Can you do it? Do you have the time? Are you sure you can? Okay. So consult. In that case, it's a give and take. You are keeping the person in the know. You are letting the person understand that I'm ready to do it. And the person also buys into it. Okay. So once again, before we move on to delegate, it's always important to empower. Why empowering? Why should we empower? Um, why should we empower somebody? Okay, the question is empowerment is better. It helps in giving a better look at the problems on the ground. If I empower you to undertake a task, the fact is that you get to the ground, you know that you are the goal owner. It makes sense to me that I need to get fully involved in it. Okay. It also makes financial sense. If you want to delay your business process for a while, at the end of the day, you take your time to weigh the cost benefits. Okay. And again, for those of us who are like knowledge workers, we have to always think before we deliver. Those who use their head, the service sector providers, okay, they normally require some kind of supervision before you give us, you empower us. Yes, we are empowered to teach, but give us some supervision before I stand in front of the class and teach something technical but abstract. Okay, so it's always important to always give someone the empowerment to do this, and we are being told that it is linked to delaying. Okay, where there's a forced empowerment through removing layers. So instead of getting this long process, cut some off. Okay, and then flexibility allows them to make good decisions in terms of product service provision and product manufacturing. Okay, and helps us to also infuse new technology where I am saying you need some kind of supervision to rule. Okay, theories of management, there are a number of them. We cannot read all. Okay, you can see on the slides that we said Weber. Read it on your own. Okay, read it. When you go through the text, it gives you a number of theories over there. We'll highlight one or two. We'll not look at that of Trist and Bamforth. You got to read that one. Okay, Max Weber's own on bureaucracy. You got to read that one as well. We'll look at Taylor, even Herzberg's. We may ask you to read that one on your own. And then Maslow's theory of needs. We'll look at that. We'll look at Burns and Stalker's contingency theory. And Morgan's, perhaps we'll leave it for you to look at. Okay. Otherwise, it will be a reproduction of the entire material. Okay. But I'll touch on it briefly along the line. So remember the theories of management. Initially, we mentioned classical and human relations. Two other aspects deals with the systems and contingency. Okay. For the classical approach, we mentioned using Henry Fayol's scenario. Okay, where it's talking of using systems, structures, bureaucracies. Let me not use the word bureaucracies now because that falls under Weber's bureaucracy. Okay, but still, it's under classical. So system structures, and they are always expected that you follow commands, line, logical and rational processes in order to achieve what you have set up to do. Okay, so we call this the science. So the Taylor's theory is what we term the scientific management theory. We'll come to it, but I want to touch it quickly. And then Weber proposed the bureaucracy theory. Okay. Now, these form some key foundations on which most organizations run. And in any organizations, you'll find some form of classical management theory being used over there. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Trist and Bamforth on system. Human relations talks of bringing a human touch to it. We're dealing with humans. We are working with humans. Even if machines and systems are in place, human beings operate them. Add some human touch to it. So Frederick Herzberg mentioned something. We'll look at that. And Maslow's theory of needs, which we all know. Okay. Now, I want to proceed and look at Trist and Bamforth's systems theory. He said you got to read it on your own. But here they look at the fact that the organization operates or not on its own, but both in a social environment and with some technological systems that they need to use. So they develop a socio-technical system and introduce a system in the mining sector. They did an experiment. So introduce a new cutting machine in the mine. This new cutting machine took the place of human beings. Okay. And what they realized was that people kept absenting themselves from work. When they researched, they realized that the new technology broke up the kind of relationship people had at the workplace. Human beings will come and manually work. In the process, they talk. They talk about their families, about life. They get to know each other. They feel each other's presence. But when the systems came in to take the role of the human beings, I'm there with the machine. I can't talk with the machine. I'm there alone. I could have done it with my friend. So it led to some kind of demotivation. Okay. So they realized that it is always important that in any organization, we need to balance the two, the technology and then the human. Okay. Contingency theory, basically credited to Burns and Stalker. They did some kind of research in Scotland. Okay. They talk of it depends on the situation. They are saying that we cannot just use systems approach or classical approach or human approach. It depends on the situation. It is contingent upon the situation that we find ourselves. Okay. They said sometimes you can mix them and it makes the work more efficient. Okay. So they managed to look at ways in which technologies were introduced in companies in Scotland, and then they realized there are some difficulties in low tech companies in the conversion process to high tech. Okay. And they realized there are some structural differences. So they said it depends on the situation. It does not necessarily mean that you have to always stick to one size fits all. Okay. So, like I was saying, F.W. Taylor, his theory on his systematic theory, scientific, classical theory of scientific management. He talks of every element in organizations capable of being investigated scientifically. He says in our world today, he says it's a world of science. We can do everything. We can always have to check. Okay. So Taylor, he existed between 1856 and 1915, and he was more interested in practical output. Okay. So he said, let us break down tasks into smaller bits. Repeat it quickly, observe workers, record them, and time what they did. Scientific approach, like a positivist movement. Okay. He was an engineer. He looked a very good engineer. Okay. Now, he said, in every work, it is a science of work. Every manager should download and should rationally analyze every bit of work in their workers. Okay. And then it went on, he went on to say that whenever we are even selecting staff, we should use some scientific approach. Is there anything peculiar about this guy? Anything we can leverage on? Okay. Now he was actually, odd enough, he was actually emphasizing the last point most of all, that let us always put in a scientific method of selecting people. And then he said there is always the need for constant interaction and cooperation. He advocated scientific approach, but still looked at the human aspect. Okay. He still looked at the human aspect, that let us plug the human aspect in and it will help in solving something popping up on my screen. Let me close it. Okay. All right. So he says that in so doing, we will be able to maximize productivity if we put in this scientific approach. But again, to keep this working, he said always constant interaction between management and workers helps to achieve overall goal. Taylor, again in practice, how do we see this happening in practice? Okay, despite F.W. Taylor's enthusiasm, workers hated this approach. They hated it, totally resented. Okay, interestingly, one person that was an ardent follower of Taylor was Henry Ford. Okay, and you will not be surprised. This guy Taylor was an engineer, and we know Ford Motors. Okay, and that had led to a massive improvement in production, but workers rebelled because they were like little more than machines. They were seen like machines. Scientific approach, use them. So Taylor's approach can actually be seen as a way of manipulating or even bullying. Okay, why should you subject human beings to a scientific approach? It's not right. Okay, human beings are social animals, we are said, we are told. So use some social approach, not scientific. Okay. Anyone who really loved F.W. Taylor's approach is sometimes seen as an odd person. Okay. Now, the key element is that we should use work study techniques. We plan to separate planning from doing, micro design objectives or jobs, and always monitor them, observe them, and then try to incentivize people who wants to work extra. It's more or less like buying them, okay? But if you persistently do this, what happens? People resent it, okay? People will totally resent it. You are like micromanaging, you are automating them, and it doesn't help. Close supervision, sometimes leave them, okay, to do their own jobs, okay? Again, you can see this happening in large fast food franchises. They always want you to work in line with what the overall head office wants you to undertake, okay? Let's move on to Herzberg. Okay, let's move on to Herzberg. Taylor's scenario is important today. In fact, Taylor advocated for a win-win situation. Incentivize them, build the competency of the staff, give them skills, train them so that they can also work higher, well, for you to also benefit. It was a give and take situation in the case of Taylor. Um, we didn't touch on Max Weber, but Max Weber's own deals with bureaucratic management. Follow formal hierarchy of authority, strict rules and regulations to undertake any decisions, specialize in duties, segregation of duties, we mean, okay, and it is so formal, bureaucratic. Today, if you hear of the word bureaucracy, you wouldn't like it. It's like there's no room for you to operate, to even think aloud, or to even bring some innovative ideas. So that was Max Weber's scenario. It is important today. It helps us to be formally inclined. Orderliness is always in place. It helps. Bureaucracy helps a lot sometimes. But again, the disadvantage is that it can lead to slow change. There will be lack of speedy communication because you need to follow the chain of command. You need to follow through scenarios. It stifles innovation and creativity. So those are some of the weaknesses of Weber's um, bureaucracy. Okay. Now we look at the human relations school, Herzberg, theory of motivation. So Frederick Herzberg looked at identifying motivational needs of individuals. And he looked at two hygiene factors. The absence of hygiene factors leads to dissatisfaction among the staff. And then he also looked at motivational factors. Here he said, let us find ways that we can satisfy the needs of individuals for personal growth. Okay. So he looked at plug in place motivational factors to move them, to urge them on. If we want to avoid unpleasantness, bring in the hygiene factors. If you want them to grow, motivate them in any way you can think of. Okay. Now, the hygiene factors to avoid dissatisfaction, there should be company policies on staff treatment, salary appropriateness for the job. Okay. Look at quality of supervision and who even does that. Okay. Also, any clear cut and highly improved interpersonal relationships and communication skills, and also bringing in place some satisfactory work conditions, good working environments, conducive, something that is inviting enough. Job security helps to promote these hygiene factors. Okay, so we're talking of hygiene not from typically health side, but we're talking of organizational hygiene. Then the motivational factor says that managers should offer staff status, recognize them, promote them, give them some advancement. They shouldn't be stuck at where they are. Okay. Also give them responsibility. Then they will know they are taking part in the overall growth of the company. Challenge them to think outside the box. And once they achieve something, recognize them. Okay. In so doing, you help to improve them and build their personal life or personal growth. Okay. We are wrapping up soon. We are looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, we are looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is also from the same school of thought. Okay, now Maslow's hierarchy of needs is what we are seeing here, with the physiological needs at the bottom. It is the basic. It is the main thing we need. Okay, so talk of your basic salary. You want some safe working environment. Okay, you need someone around you the basic human needs that we need. Okay, you cannot be an island. It's very important. Okay, safe working environment is very important. Now, each of these that we see, each of these portion on the needs, on the hierarchy of needs that we see, must be satisfied. Okay, we cannot satisfy all at a time, but it could gradually grow. Okay, so the physiological needs talks of food, water, shelter, company. Okay, security. Even at the workplace, we need someone to talk to. There was a friend who was working for all this while for some time, and nobody seems to have even. They'll call him, "Hey, friend," I don't want to mention his name, and then one day I went to him and I called him my brother. That was it. He felt so touched that somebody could call him a brother. Okay. He said, "I've been working here for years. Nobody has ever called me a brother." Okay. So that kind of um, that one is I mean, it is part of the self-actualization or social needs. But I find it more physiological. You get company, you get close to that person, okay? You talk to him. That belongingness is very key. But physiological will more center on basic needs, food, water, shelter, okay? And then safety and security in the organization, let them know that they belong to somewhere. That's what I'm talking about. So dealing with a friend, telling me a brother, he felt that belongingness. Okay, belongingness, very key. So belongingness needs some social requirements. Okay, and then we have the safety needs, job security, like I'm saying, respect from others. We have the social needs, workplace friendship. Please, at the workplace, don't be like a don't be like an island. And no human being is an island. Relate with someone. And then esteem needs, job recognition. When the person does something well, send him a little email, thank him. Okay, if you have to applaud him or her openly, do it. It's very important. Okay, then respect from others at the workplace, decorous. Choose the right words when you're speaking to someone. Know that we are humans. We could be hurt. Okay, and then again, we're looking at the esteem needs. In fact, the esteem needs is what sometimes we call the ego. Okay, so from basic physiological, we go to safety or security, and then we go to social. From social, we go to ego. Everyone has an ego, esteem. Okay, if you step on my ego, I'll be mad at you. Okay, here we're talking of merit pay increase, high status. Okay, high status, very important recognition. And then we have the final one at the peak, which is the self actualization. So we're talking of getting an interesting and challenging work, opportunities to what to advance, to progress, to achieve work objectives, to be able to be creative enough to undertake some tax demands is also important. Okay, so I mean, at the end of the day, we all getting to that level. Some people work at the workplace not because of money, but they want to achieve that level, that status. So when the position comes, when there's a position which pops up and each person can do it, you don't give to the person, you kill the spirit. You've just totally weakened him. Okay. There were criticisms to Maslow's theory of needs, and it says one of them says that the model is culture based, in that it only reflects the advanced world system, especially that of the UK and the US. Seems not to apply to Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia. It seems not to have applied to those areas. Okay. Again, not everyone in this life can move up in the model or would even want to move up in the model. Some people are content. They are just where they are. I know some students, when they are writing exams, they keep counting the marks. They know pass mark is 40. After answering a couple of questions, then they know this is the threshold at this level. When the teacher marks this, I'm sure I'll get 40. I'll get my 50. They get up and go. They are not interested in getting to the top. So we have some individuals like that who don't want to rise up in the model. Okay. It also ignores the concept of deferred or delayed gratification. Okay. So Daniel Coleman's emotional intelligence concept comes in. You should always know that some people would want to delay gratification for such a time before. Don't think we will all want to rise. Some people want to wait, and before you see, they jump over scales. Okay, but it is always taught. Now, this model is looking at it should be a continuum, one after the other. No, sometimes we may jump over time. Okay, again, people's needs change. Today, the person's aim is to get basic needs. But for all you know, tomorrow this person wants the ego. He wants the esteem needs, not the safety needs. So people's needs change all of a sudden. Okay. And again, empirical verification of the model is difficult. How do you know where I am now? Who can tell me where I am now? Am I in the basic or safety or esteem or self-actualization? It's difficult. Okay. And then Burns and Stalker, I want to wrap up with Burns and Stalker. So Burns and Stalker, like I said, they look at the contingency. Classical management theories, according to some, did not always work from Burns and Stalker. So they said, let's distinguish between the mechanistic and the organic. Okay. And this is what they stated. They said the beginning of administrative wisdom is the awareness that there's no one best way of designing a management system. Best way. It's not best. Okay. So they are saying that it depends on the situation. Don't make everything mechanical. Don't make everything organic. If you can combine them, it's the best. That's what they were saying. Okay. So it says it depends on the situation in which you find yourself. For them, they found the mechanical, they found the mechanistic organization to be having some features, some advantages. They said yes. It helps with high degree of task specialization. It helps to clearly define who is doing what and who is embedded or imbued with authority. They are also saying that yes, it leads to some form of coordination and goal congruence in terms of responsibility at each level of the management structure. It also helps in some kind of selectivity in the release of top level information to subordinates. We don't release everything. Sensitive ones are kept, classified ones are kept. And also, they also thought, well, it is most appropriate in a fairly stable business organization, okay, where we think that change of management has not been seen to be an important factor. Everything being, all things being equal, they think it could be that stable, okay. But however, they looked at organic structure to be said that within an organic organization, the skills, the technical know-how is considered as the most valuable resource. And most human resources will always leverage on the organic structure of Burns and Stalker that in every workplace, the human factor, the human being, is the most valuable resource. And here, this considered integrating effort through some lateral and vertical or diagonal communication channels. Don't always take it one line. It could always cut across. It depends, but make sure you follow the order of command. Otherwise, it may cause some confusion or conflict at the workplace. Leadership should be based on consultation. Commitment to achieve the task, survival, and growth is key so that we can all meet the overall strategy of the organization. And it is always important under an organic organizational structure that almost everyone in the organization will respond to change. So that at the end of the day, a positive change, of course, not any kind of change. So that at the end of the day, we can always move towards what we seek to achieve. If there's a technological change and it's a positive one, we should imbibe, we should respond to it, we should buy into it. Okay. At the end of the day, the overall goal of the organization will be achieved. I end here on the theories. There are more you could look into. Okay. We didn't look into Trist and Bamford's systems theory, which I would think you could look into it quite easy to look at. Okay. And again, there are some contemporary perspectives which we can always look into. All right. We'll come back to this and then look at other. So we deal with management theories. We'll come to leadership in the next section. Thanks for now.